So we are thrilled to bring this next guest into the Rail Talk studio, appropriately dressed for the weather that we're all facing these days. And the frosted hat, you got it going on. Elizabeth Masi, the Stallion coordinator for Jonabell Farm. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, guys. Happy to be here.
We're so stoked to have you, and it's breeding season, it's foaling season, so we're going to ask some progressively stupider questions about the breeding and foaling process. But first, I would like to get to know you a little bit and how you got into racing and horses.
Sure. So I am actually from just outside of Seattle, Washington, which is just the haven of thoroughbred racing, right?
I was going to say, yeah.
But I grew up doing show jumpers all up and down the West Coast to Arizona and Canada, and then went to school at Virginia Tech and studied animal science. And as one does when you graduate, you go, what to do next? And packed up the car and went to Kentucky to do the horses. So decided it was a venture that I didn't know much about because I was so into the show world, but I've obviously loved it and have stuck with it. So
it's worked out for you. Yeah. Great story. John, go ahead.
So Elizabeth, what a lot of the audience I don't think realizes is that you're like an air traffic control person for the Stallion.
Yeah, okay. Great way of putting it.
So your job is fill in the blank. My job is to blank, and it takes me blank hours a week to do it.
Well, I could tell you what my dad says I do. I don't know if it's appropriate.
No, go ahead.
When I got the job and I was telling and explaining it to him, he said, "Okay, kid, so you're a pimp?" And I said, "I would prefer madam, but that's fine."
Can you put that in her title at the bottom, Elizabeth's parentheses horse pimp?
Yes, could we please? I think it works. So, during breeding season, which was obviously mid-February, beginning early February to the end of June, you're going all day. The stallions are breeding 3 days a week or 3 times a day, excuse me. And then, but you're fielding phone calls, probably 100 phone calls a day, trying to get every mare in. So it takes quite a bit. It would take, 5 months to get it done if you want to say everybody,
Right.
Yeah.
And then you take the other 7 months off for vacation. Is that?
I mean, no, because we start contracting in October, and that is a full-time gig. And then, I help with our consignments in November and January with our mares that we sell under Godolphin, and just sort of other things, and can kind of shoot into the racing department and help them if I need to, or, just try and be useful.
Yep. And coordinate perfect winter outfits, clearly.
And coordinate perfect winter outfits, yeah.
That takes time, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Shout out to Frosted, one of our faves. But so you were talking to Patty earlier, and you mentioned when the Darley Flying Starters come aboard, they're kind of shocked at how intense and drawn out the process is. What are some of the frequently asked questions or some of their misconceptions? It doesn't have to be flying starters. It could be people that you give tours to. What are some of the things that kind of blow their mind when they tour a breeding and stallion farm?
Right. I think a common misconception is that we just get a phone call and we just say, "Yeah, sure, come." Like it's nothing, and then the mare just shows up, gets bred, and goes home. And there's so much, like I said, starting from October on, getting the contracts out, making sure they're returned and signed, and, the mare information sheets, all of that has to come into play. And then obviously, fortunately, they don't all come at once because it's staggered with your barons and your resteds and your maidens to your foaling mares. But I think there's so much minutia that goes into it that they just don't think of, that a lot of people wouldn't think of. And why would you? But, down to requirements, and requirements change. And she was a foaling mare in October, but now she's not. Now what needs to happen? Imported mares, that's a whole nother case that I have to go behind the scenes with the USDA and take care of all that kind of stuff. So I think they're just a little surprised that it's not just a vet helping and ultrasounding a mare and calling me up and saying, yeah, come on, and then off we go.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, just a quick follow up on that because it's early in the foaling and breeding season. I would think it goes on to like late spring. Where are you at now? Like, what part of the process are you guys at right now?
So we are probably finishing up our contracting part with the Darley Stallions. And now I'm starting to field phone calls, making sure paperwork is in, wanting to know when we'll start breeding. I had one in December that called me and asked me, and I said, you're making my eye twitch. It's not even 2024. Stop it. So, people just get really kind of amped up and you kind of have to just calm them down and, we'll get it sorted and figured out and it'll be okay. So we generally say that we'll open on the 14th. And if you need a day or two beforehand, to give us a call. But, so we've got a little bit of time to get everybody rolling, but it's just personnel, making sure the weekends are scheduled for the whole season and doing all of that behind the scenes. Yeah.
And on top of that, you have the additional difficulties of having first year stallions, older stallions, and everything in between. So how do you know for the first year stallions, like you guys are standing Cody's Wish and Proxy and Speaker's Corner and am I missing one?
Mystic Guide.
I missed a guide. Right. I missed a guide.
Speakers and Mystic are already covered a year, but yes.
Okay, that's right. Yeah. So last year with those two and this year with Proxy and Cody, when do you kind of get into a rhythm with them where okay, they can be bred twice a day or 3 times a day, or I need to give them a day off? Like how does that all kind of develop? And I think it's year to year, right? Don't they all change on as far as how potent they are.
Absolutely. It, with the 2 new boys or anytime you have a new boy, they obviously get a test breeding beforehand and make sure everything is, working and in all capacities and that they understand what's going on because you can imagine it's a new field for them. Right. But which they both did very well at. And then you just kind of have to treat them like it's going to work. Like you just sort of rock and roll and then you let them tell you. We always try to be very, sort of conscientious and respectful of the stallions when they say, okay, I need a break or, yes, I can keep going. And some of our stallions, Medaglia, I love our old boy. He will flat out tell you, you've pushed me too far. I'm done. And I'm going to take 2 days off. And there is nothing any of you can do about it. And we go, yes, sir.
That's right. He's earned it.
And he's earned it. And of course he does it when, in May, when everybody's scrambling to get there at the worst possible time. Right. But you just respect it. And I've learned over the years that you learn the nuances of each stallion. And okay, so with Medaglia, for example, if he's had 6 days in a row of 3-a-day breedings, I'll try and block something off for him if at all possible and let him have a night off or something like that. Sometimes we just have to power through, but we do try to listen to them first and foremost, obviously, because if they're not doing it, then we're all.
Yeah. And do any of them have any specific preferences? Like I know Seattle Slew used to prefer a certain kind of mare and Bolt d'Oro, prefers a mare that has a foal by its eye, so do any of them have any like nuances like that where they won't breed gray mares or they love chestnuts or maidens?
Right. So I don't know if you remember, we had a stallion named Girolamo a few years ago. Mm-hmm. He loved, for lack of a better term, dirty mares. He did not want them cleaned up. He didn't want them spit shined. He wanted them out of the paddock. And we would say, please do not do anything to literally pull them out of the paddock. And they're like, it goes against everything I do. I know. But he also could tell when a mare was brought in artificially through Proston versus when she was coming naturally into heat and did not care for those as much. And yeah, he just wouldn't breed them. So fortunately now, knock on wood, most of our boys don't have those nuances, because that was frustrating at times.
What I'm hearing from Medaglia, Doro, and Girolamo is that the Italians are very specific in what they want,
and
which I can back up.
And very fertile.
Yes. Well,
You are picking up on it. They know what they like.
Yep.
It is what it is. And, welcome to our world.
Right.
Exactly.
Yes.
So I wanted to ask a little bit about the off season, because obviously the breeding season only goes for a certain amount of months.
Mm-hmm.
What's the stallion's life like when they're not breeding? Like, how much turnout time do they get? What kind of attention do they get outside of the breeding shed? Just what's it like for them when they're not breeding?
Well, yeah, no. So they get, I would say their turnout schedule kind of flops a little bit, where they get to be out in the most of the morning and come in, after lunch. Obviously in this weather, they won't get a bath, but when it's nice and hot out, they probably get a bath and cleaned up. And then we've got a lot of tours that will come through, that will come and see them, and breeders that will come out. So they get a sufficient amount of attention and adoration, which we all know they need.
Especially the Italians.
I see we have the same kind of eyebrows, so we're simpatico there.
Exactly.
And then we also have a aqua tread that we will put them on more during the off season to kind of help maintain their strength and back strength and everything like that. So
right.
They get work. But speaking of Medaglia and the Italian, he does not like being out too long. He doesn't like the heat. He's a finicky boy, but he deserves it.
He absolutely does. Now, let's pretend the cameras aren't on. Do you have a favorite and why?
Okay. Alive or past?
Anything. Anyone that you've worked with.
So my absolute favorite was Bernardini. And I know he retired shortly after I started here. I started the year before he retired. So he was my first real foray with the company into this game, and to be a Preakness winner and everything, and a homebred. Ran up to the barn, met him, and he was, I don't know if you've both had ever seen him or met him in person.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Such a gentleman. I could have gotten on his back and ridden him around the farm. Just an absolute love bug, and which I know is not professional said, but I just adored him, and he was so easy to book and breed, and was fertile, and just could throw anything at him, and he was willing to take it on. So unfortunately, since he has passed, I will give it to his grandson, Maxfield, now. And he's living up to those shoes. He's got his eye, so I thought was the prettiest eye in the business. So I'm glad that he's here.
Gorgeous horse. And I can concur on Bernardini. I met him in the summer of Saratoga when he won the Travers and fell in love with him instantly. Just the nicest personality, but also exuded the class of a great racehorse. Like, you don't often get that total package,
You really don't. And he had this confidence and air about him, but there was no arrogance to it. And it was just sort of, it's okay. I gotcha. Mm-hmm. Come for the ride, and we'd go, okay.
A humble but confident king. We love that.
Right. That's right.
I wanted to ask a little bit about the foals, because obviously, guys, you have a lot of homebreds.
Mm-hmm.
We were doing a West Point call earlier today with Doc Iseman, and one of the questions was, how soon do the yearlings start to separate themselves in terms of ability? So I'm curious about foals. Like, when they're first born, I assume they're all pretty similar, but then how soon do you start to be able to tell them apart in terms of, their temperament and maybe their potential on the racetrack?
Well, I mean, that's a great question. And I think a lot of people would have a different personal answer to that, right? As to what they want to see in a horse. But I think you could especially during weaning, if you see how they handle the weaning process and what's thrown at them with that, and how they handle themselves in the herd environment, I think you can really start to tell that this one is going to stand out a little bit. And of course, you want to. Oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, are there any that pop into your head that like really stood out early and turned out to be great?
Well, I unfortunately don't get to see ours as often as I would like to since I'm here at the computer making the babies. But I know Essential Quality was one because he foaled out here at Jonabell. He was one that really stood out and had that sort of confidence and charm to him, if you will, with a little bit of naughtiness.
Yeah, gotcha.
And he actually was a cute little story. His mother, his dam, always likes to bury her foals in the stall in hay when they go down for a nap. And apparently when he was on the track, he would bury himself under his hay in the stall when he was taking a nap. Probably doesn't want me telling you that, but it's a cute story.
Oh, that's great.
So sweet.
I know. Yeah.
Elizabeth, I think you've been outstanding. Everything that you've been built up to by everyone in the industry, they have definitely have a lot of support and confidence in everything you do. And I know from breeding mares at Darley for longer than I want to admit, because I'd be aging myself. But when Bernardini first started breeding, that's when we first started working with you guys.
Wow.
And it's been a pleasure to be able to work with you and Kate Galvin, one of my favorite people in the industry. And I think you guys just have a phenomenal program, from breeding to racing.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been here. I've started my 19th year, and I always tell people I'm starting to figure out if I like it or not. But, I'll get back to you. But I love working here. It's a great, as you said, a great operation. And we've been on a really fun ride these past few years with our homebreds. And so I'm really lucky to be here and have such great clients as you.
Well, it was great to have you. Great to get to know you and get to know the breeding and foaling process. And come back anytime. Thanks, Elizabeth.
I would love to. Good to see you guys.